Here's my Amazon computer that I have set up a XData server here running at the address HTTP server name /music. If I go to my local machine here, I can try to connect to that server, and it's responding to this address app.devgems.com, and we can see that Chrome tells me that your connection to this site is not secure because I'm using HTTP. So how do I get my connection encrypted and secure? I have to install a certificate, and I can do that using Let's Encrypt. The tool I use here is called Let's Encrypt Win Simple. You can its web page is on GitHub at this address. I can simply go to releases here and download the latest version. Of course, I have already downloaded it here, and I just need to send this zip to my Amazon computer, which I have already done. It's here. So I just need to extract the content of that compressed file to any folder you want. I will extract it to the folder C/Let's Encrypt, and it's ready to use. There is one special thing that we have to do here, which is change the config file. Let's open it with Notepad. And we will change the default certificate store, which is the store that the certificate will be saved to. Web hosting it uses by IIS. We don't use that for XData. So let's just save the certificate in the personal folder, personal store. Save. And now we can start Let's Encrypt. We do that just by running the Let's Encrypt command line. And it's always safe to use first the test parameter, so we don't get real certificates from Let's Encrypt. The reason for that is that there are very low rate limits for production. For example, you can only get 5 certificates or renewals per week. So if you are going to do a lot of testing, you easily reach that limit. Then let's use test and run it. It tells me that it's going to use staging API, which is the test one from Let's Encrypt. For the first time, it will ask us for an email address. It's going to be used for sending notifications about the expiration of the certificates. So when a certificate is about to expire, it will send a remind to you in that email address you type here. It's just for the first time. I'll type my email address. And it will just ask if you agree to the terms of service. We don't have to do that anymore for the test environment. We'll have to do it again for the production environment. And here is the main menu for Let's Encrypt. We have several options here. We're going to use the first one, which you have to type N. That is for create new certificate. It gives us several options here, several ways to generate the certificate. Most of them are related to IIS, which we are not going to use. So our option is use the manual plugin, which is what it calls it, manually input host names, option 4. And we have to now type the list of host names or domains we are going to generate the certificate for. You can have multiple domains in the same certificate, just type separated by comma. In this case, we are going to type appdevgems.com. And now in this step, we have to prove, Let's Encrypt, that we own that domain. There are several ways to do that, which is, for example, updating DNS or serving a file. The most used one is just to put a specific file and respond that file when Let's Encrypt tries to grab it from our domain, which usually will be in the address app.devgems.com/well-known/acme challenge. And we can do that using Sparkle. We can file the serve here, but there is a much more straightforward way, which is self-host verification files, option 3 there. In this mode, Let's Encrypt itself will just start a small HTTP server on port 80 to serve that file for us. So let's choose option 3. It says that answer should now be browsable, so it's responding to that address, this address. We don't have to test it in browser here. You can do that yourself if you want to. So we can say no, and it will ask Let's Encrypt to generate this certificate. So in this last process, what happens is that we ask it Let's Encrypt server to check, to confirm that we own our domain. Let's Encrypt try it to grab that file in that well-known address. Let's Encrypt confirm it that we have put that file there, so we own the app.devgems.com domain, and the certificate was generated for us, downloaded, and now Let's Encrypt, when simple, is asking if I want to install the certificate. Yes. If you go to the certificates here list, we can see that the certificate is installed. Issued by Fake, of course, intermediate. So it's a certificate that it's not trusted because we are using the test environment. And now it asks if we want to update the certificate to our server software. That's the part where we have to bind the certificate, which is installed in our computer, to the XData server I'm running. I will say no here because we have to do Let's Encrypt WinSimple doesn't know how to do that yet, so we have to do that manually. No. And do I want to renew the certificate? Not yet. And that's it. If we go back to our server here, let's stop our server and start a new one with HTTPS address on the default port. Okay, in theory we have our server running, but if we try to access it from our computer, HTTPS, it will say that this site can be reached. Let's go back to our server computer and bind the certificate we just got from Let's Encrypt to our server. For that you can use the TMS Sparkle tool. We go to SSL tab, we ask to add a new binding to the IP address, to all IP address IP address 0, port default port, and select the certificate. It will show me the certificate we have just generated. We click OK, confirm, and we have our certificate bound to our address. If you go back to our server now, restart it, and try to access it, it's working. Of course, Chrome says that that connection is not secure because the certificate is invalid. It's our fake certificate. But if you say that we are aware of it and proceed, we have our server running with our certificate. That's great. We should just repeat the process without using the test environment, but the production one. But the problem is that Let's Encrypt certificates expire in 90 days. The reason for that is that they is for security, and also because they want that all that process to be automated. Ideally, we will not create and install certificates manually each 90 days. We should automate the process, especially because they say that once more and more people are adopting and automating the process, they might even reduce the certificate expiration period. So in future it might not even be 90 days but 60 or even less. So how do we automate that? We have several options here, several command line options to automate all the process we did manually here. The most complex one is just create a script that will bind the certificate Let's Encrypt generate for us to our XData server. To do that, we're going to create a bat file that does that for us. Let's run Notepad. Using the net sh command, and the second one is install the certificate, the new certificate. For that we need the certificate thumbprint. We'll use the certhash parameter that will pass to our batch file. The second one is the certificate store name. And finally, a ID for your server, which is required by the command line. You can use any GID you want. We are just type 1 here. And that's it. Let's save it in our Let's Encrypt directory, and let's call it bind certificate.bat. Now, what's the command line you need to use? Let's encrypt using test environment, using manual plugin, manual host parameter. We inform the domain we want to generate our certificate for. The way you're going to validate is self-hosting with that, which was that option where Let's Encrypt WinSimple itself hosts the file for us. And finally, to complete the process of installing is the last one, which is bind the certificate to our server. It's the path to our batch file we have just created, and we need to pass the parameters to it, which will be 5 and 3. This is described in Let's Encrypt WinSimple documentation. The parameter named numbered 5 will be the certificate hash, and the parameter number 3 will be the certificate store. That's the order we use it in our batch file. And since we are now going to create a scheduled task to renew our certificate automatically, we will use a parameter here, which is use default task user. When Let's Encrypt WinSimple creates the scheduled task, it will use the default Windows user for that. Let's run our command line. Let's not try in the default browser again. Note that this is only asked in the test environment. The production environment will not ask such questions for us. Let's install the certificate. Now we said yes to the question if we want to update our certificate in our server, because we have created a batch file that will be run now. And do we want to renew our certificate? Yes. It's done. Note that we have now 2 certificates here because we have created 2 new certificates. Okay? And we can delete the previous one because it was the one we were used before. We can see that in task scheduler, a new task has been created here to run Let's Encrypt. Which is just run Let's Encrypt with parameter renew and the base URI. Note that the only parameter here is renew. How do Let's Encrypt WinSimple get information to renew the certificate? It's saved in the registry. For the test environment, we have a JSON file here with all the renewals. So it's saved in the registry, we don't have to worry about that. If we run Let's Encrypt again, do not forget to use the test parameter. We can now use the L option, which is list schedule renewals, and we have our number 1 there, which is appdevgems.com, renew after a specified date. We can ask for renew all scheduled certificates using R option. This will just trigger that same command line, same process that is scheduled in the task scheduler. Renew schedule. Okay, renew schedule is just to renew the certificates that are about to expire. We can just ask for renew all actually, and the certificate will be renewed. If you go back to the certificates here, we'll see now that we still have only 2 certificates. The first one was generated manually. The second one was also generated manually, I mean a new one, and this second one was renewed. So that's why when you renew the certificate, no new certificates will be added here. It will delete the previous one, create a new one, and run the binding process to update our server with the certificate. We can still go back to our local computer and confirm that our server is running with a certificate. So the certificate's there. So this is our process. We have now confirmed it, and everything is automated here. We don't have to worry anymore with certificates in the server. Of course, we are using the test environment. So all we have to do now is just delete everything and create the same command line using the production environment. Let's go back there and quit and run Let's Encrypt now without the test parameter. Note that it will ask again for email address and term of service confirmation. That's because it's a different server that provides the certificates. Agree. Okay, let's quit and run that same command line. We use it for the test environment, but let's remove the test parameter. All set. What have happened before this error here is probably because the Let's Encrypt was not able to grab that file from our server, probably a temporary problem. Note that we have run the same command again and it's done. If that happens while renewal, for example, that's not very much an issue because the renew process will run in advance, many days in advance. So if it fails for a reason, eventually it will run again and again until it gets the certificate renewed. If you go to our certificate list here, we see a new certificate is created. Note that it's issued by Let's Encrypt Authority, so now it's a valid certificate. If we go to task schedule here, we also see now an additional task, which is renew the certificates on production environment. We can just leave everything like that. Everything should be working now, but we can just delete the old ones if you want to clean up. And you can also delete the scheduled task to renew the test certificates here. And you can even delete from the registry if you want, or from the command line, from Let's Encrypt command line. If you use the test parameter, you can also remove renewals, schedule renewals there. Now let's do our final test, which is check if our server is running with a valid certificate. Okay, it's now secure. Your information is private when it's sent to the site. Our server is now running with a certificate with encrypted communication. Certificates are being automatically renewed and for free. Thanks for watching, and I hope that this information will be very valuable for you guys to encrypt your API servers.